Brilliant. So I'm going to start with a massive warm welcome to David. Thanks for joining us on Learning at Large. So recently, I think you've been talking a little bit about the value that AI might actually bring to us as humans in L&D. So lots of people are talking about, if you like, the dark side of what AI might do, which perhaps might be valid as well. But you've been talking a little bit about the flip side of that, what value AI might bring to us as humans. Can you just try and kind of summarize your thinking around that for us to get us started?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a high level summary, I think the reason that I try to be more optimistic about the future, and I do think that the risk conversation is important, and I do think that there are significant risks, but I try to look at the opportunities within there, and I do think AI tools are going to enable us to have a level of understanding
Hmm.
and awareness of what people are doing and what people need that we've never had access to before. We've never had the ability to truly understand the level of complexity that exists within someone's ability to learn and perform. There are so many factors that exist there, and AI is going to enable us to have a much better understanding of what people are doing, where they're struggling, um, what they need in order to succeed in performing a skill and learning a particular task. And if that is part of the environment that AI is going to enable for us, that's hugely empowering for us. And if we are able to leverage that data in a way that is practical and in a way that better serves the people that we are working with, then that's going to enable us to reach a level of impact in terms of the work that we do that has always felt out of our reach in the time that I've been in this field.
It's like the ultimate user-centered kind of approach. Like
Exactly.
it suddenly makes conversations we've had in the past around personalization. Soon we won't be using that word, right? We won't even be mentioning that, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. You touched a little bit that you do believe there are some risks as well. You've highlighted some of the opportunities. Let's get the risks out of the way. What do you also see with some of these this new tech and capabilities coming in as a kind of, I guess, in a headline kind of way?
Sure. I mean, the headline sense of the risks for me is you know I mean the reality is there's what people say about AI, and then there's what will naturally happen with AI. I would put that under the two broad headings of job loss and bad actors.
Hmm.
I mean, I do think, as much as the public facing narrative of AI is that it's not going to take away jobs, it's going to create jobs, and I think that there's truth in that. We've all lived through environments where anytime there's an economic downturn, or everyone is people centric, and we love our employees and we love all this stuff until the report to the shareholders isn't necessarily matching expectations, and you need to correct that and make sure the shareholders are taken care of. And the easiest way to do that is human impact. And we've seen that happen on numerous occasions. And I don't believe, regardless of what's being said, that when that moment comes and there's an opportunity to impact the bottom line to appease the shareholders, and you're looking at an equation where it's like, okay, well, AI can do some of the stuff, can do 80% of the stuff that these humans are doing, we can afford to let them go. I expect that to happen. I mean, I think that's just a reality of it. And the other thing is, and this to me is probably the larger thing. It's way outside of L&D, but there are. I mean, anytime a new tech emerges, I think it needs to be looked at through the lens of how. This is overly dramatic, but I think it applies. How can this tech be used for evil? And that could be literally like people who are using this towards just horrible world level evil things, or even something as simple as what we talked about in data in the past of just kind of like, anytime there's been data, it's how are people going to use this data? Or is the data going to be used against the employees? And I think that just exceeds, that just gets amplified in the world of AI. So that there are risks attached to that I think we need to be keeping our eye on.
Yeah. And like I think in a different podcast I did recently, which is more around the shift to being skill based, which you could very much argue is the shift to being data based, like it kind of
Mhm.
is really about using AI and other tools to kind of help you get more data focused on what individuals need, whether that's skills or competency. Someone, Teresa Rose, used the word exposing. It starts to expose a lot about us, and it starts to expose things about L&D as well, right? So,
Mhm.
and what their role is in that picture. So, Okay, well, it's good to get, let's not ignore those big things. It's good to talk about some of those early on. You talked about what question you would ask in the face of AI, which was, around how it could be used. Coming back to L&D for a moment, like what question do you think they should be asking in the face of new tech and the availability of AI to them now? How can they frame their thinking around it?
Yeah, I think, I mean, AI definitely is the loudest voice in the room, but anytime a new tech emerges, I think we need to be looking. I think historically, at least within L&D, I think the limitations of how we can leverage a new tech is because we're approaching it with the wrong question.
Mhm.
We tend to approach it with, AI is the one that's there right now. How do I do what I do with AI? And I think that is a very limiting question, because it attaches to it what I do. And that's the reason that when you see, the history of technology emerging in L&D, you'll see a history of us shoehorning old methodologies into new technologies. And I think that's a reflection of that question, approaching it with the wrong question. A better question that I would recommend anytime a new technology emerges is, how does this technology change what I do, or what can I do differently with this new technology that I've never been able to do before? Questions like that are much more open. They're more opportunity focused. They enable you to see your work through a different lens. And I think that's really the power of a new technology, is how does it change the way you view the work that you do, not how do you take it and apply it to the existing viewpoint of what you do. So that's the question that I would always recommend people look at any new tech, especially in the context of the disruptions that are coming with AI.
Yeah, and we can see that with some of the kind of early uses of AI, right? And the report from Don Taylor and Agler around L&D's use of AI was very much on speeding up content creation, right? They're still
Mhm.
focused on the content creation mindset. Whereas, well, we might get into this in a minute, but the future is probably that you're not really going to be focusing on content as your output, right? It's you're going to be focusing on how you're actually helping people, and you've got data about that too in your
Mhm.
hands, well, soon anyway. So yeah, so I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's interesting that we've seen people initially embrace AI to help them with their day to day that they do now, and not
Yeah.
necessarily think, okay, now what? Like, what can I do that's completely different, but better, right? You know,
Yeah. Exactly.
yeah. Okay, so let's dive in a little bit more, if that's okay, into your thinking around, I guess, how AI can really help elevate what workplace learning looks like and what L&D might do, either now or in the future, I guess. So you've been talking a
Yeah.
little bit. Yeah, go on, come in.
Yeah. No, I think that the opportunity, and it echoes what we've already been talking about here. I think the opportunity for workplace learning to be more effective is in removing a lot of the stuff that is noise to the work that we do. I mean,
Mhm.
how much time when I think about how much time I spend in spreadsheets, just kind of managing data and massaging data in a way that gives me the information that I need to make a relatively informed decision. Now in seconds I'll have tools that can give me much more thorough analysis, much more data informed decision making, or much better organized and detailed examination of data that enables me to make a much more informed contextual decision in the moment, so I can concentrate less on the rigor of it. It removes all of the stuff that's really not the best use of my time, and it's a good use of my time today because it's getting me to that endpoint.
Mhm.
But the vast majority of the slices of the pie of time that's allocated there is in the rigor of putting the data together so that I can make an informed decision. Now that piece is almost automated, and I can spend the majority of my time on what's really valuable, which is me bringing the context of my understanding of humans, my understanding of adult learning theory, my understanding of the business needs, to put that into to make a more informed and contextual decision, and to be more creative in the solutions that I'm able to do. So it's the real opportunity here is for us to bring what is truly uniquely human to us, our empathy, our creativity, our problem solving abilities, the context of our understanding of what it means to be an employee in this space, into the solutions that we're building. And solutions to me is the key word, because it's not about just building learning experiences anymore. It's about understanding what a problem is around someone's performance and solving that. And these technologies that are for the space that we're going to have created here, that's where the human element is going to be very important. Is for us to focus less on delivery of packaged content and more on a more broader definition of how we solve performance problems in our organizations.
Hmm. And you mentioned, like, some of the human traits that we perhaps take for granted right now. Our empathy, our creativity, the ability to go and really understand context, which you can see on the ground, right? You can go and visit people in their workplaces and see what that looks like, for example, or understand what a skills gap might really look like.
Mhm.
I guess, like, I'm interested in, you mentioned, like, that means we might not be creating as much content in L&D. Um, what sort of things do you think we might do instead? So I guess in a kind of future model, like, if we ditch some things maybe from our old methodologies, what kind of new things might emerge in the way that we kind of, what might workplace learning look like?
Well, I do. There's a lot of discussion in the field around, like, content is going to become automated,
Hmm.
and I, while there's truth to that, I don't make that statement myself, because I think that for me at least, it's less a content is going to be automated and more the content is going to be redefined. Right now, content is a very broad term.
Hmm.
Experience that we create is a very broad term. But in practice, and what happens within a lot of L&D, those two words get very, very small in their definition in practice. Content looks like an e-learning course, or it looks like a training course. That's how a lot of us define content in practice as a default. Experience looks like someone's going to take some sort of a formal training program very often in there. And for me, it's less around those things are going to get automated, because that carries the definition of what we've been practiced. It's really more about redefining what that is. What is the content that we're creating? What is the experience? For me, even before all this technology emerged, when I was in banking, I knew people hated sending their people to training. I mean, I come from, I've been in this field for a while. And when I was in banking, there was a point where if you needed to have any sort of a training initiative, this is pre-e-learning, you needed to send someone to the training center to sit in a classroom with me or someone from the team to learn how to do something and then go back and apply it. Literally the most disruptive method of upskilling somebody. Um, and I knew people hated that. And even before all this tech was in there, even before I was as knowledgeable as I am today, I knew that I wanted to. I would say to the team, "What's the least disruptive way that we can solve this problem? Can we send them a job aid? I mean, it wasn't even like I could email them a PDF. It was a matter of, can we send through interoffice mail a page that people can have that they can read on site so that they can learn to do this? Is there a post-it note that they can put on their screen that's going to help them do this sort of thing?" um, because we were looking for the least disruptive way to solve the problem that people were having. And now technology has emerged that enables us to do that in real time. And I think we just need to reframe the lens around what is the experience. Is the experience just finding a way to leverage the systems that are there to give people support in the moment when they're struggling with something and getting out of their way? You know, for me, it's even a redefinition of how we use the word learning in practice. Learning has a lot of meaning in the terms of the way that we use it, but in an organizational context, when you really shift your lens less around learning and more around performance, there are going to be some cases, as much as it may not necessarily feel right to a learning professional, where I don't care if you learn something. Like, if you have to do a task once every 6 months, I don't necessarily need you to understand the terms of how to do that and remember it and be able to apply it in the moment's notice. I need you to have the resource necessary to apply it appropriately in that moment. Whether you retain it or not is secondary to me, because of the nature of that task. And that to me is just a simple example of redefining how we look at learning, how we look at content, how we look at experiences, and define and fitting it more into the context of the workplace.
And some of that will come back to that data that you talked about at the beginning, right? The fact that we'll have more data on individuals, what they need in what context, how frequently, on what systems, will help help us with AI to work out whether somebody needs something in the moment, hopefully there and
Mhm.
then in that system or wherever they're working. First is those skills that are going to be more in depth, and do need more focused learning rate. I guess, do you think there's a risk that we will end up, or businesses will end up focusing on quick task fixes, quick performance fixes over and above slightly longer term development? I see that happens now, in lots of cases. So, yeah, do you think that will kind of continue in that kind of model, or do you think we'll start to reframe that given the skills gaps that we're seeing all over the place?
I I I think it's gonna vary by a number of things. I mean, every culture and organization is unique, so it'll look different in every culture. But some of the broad stroke things that I think do apply is I think that across the board, I usually use the analogy of a rubber band. That anytime there's a disruption or there's an opportunity, like AI, and right now we're at the point where the rubber band is being stretched really, really far around the efficiencies that AI can give us, automation and all these things. All the organizations are just, because it's the lowest hanging fruit. Every individual in an organization is just kind of like, oh my God, we can be so much more efficient by using these tools, and they're stretching and stretching and stretching the rubber band to how much value can we get out of this. And then we're going to discover that we've gone too far in certain cases. We're going to discover that some of the nuances that are really important between humans that are in there that has been removed by the automation are more important than we realize. We'll discover we've gone too far by crossing that line and getting burned for it, and the rubber band will snap back to a normalization there. I think that's going to happen naturally. I think that happens for broadly in organizations. I think it happens with narrowly in the context of how we apply things in L&D, is that we'll take advantage of how much we can do, and we'll discover we went too far and snap back to a level of normalcy. And I think that that's going to be really important in the context of AI, because I do think individuals and on an individual level of how I'm using these tools, and at an organization level how we're applying these tools to be more efficient and to be more effective as an organization, where in a lot of cases we're not going to realize we went too far until we realize that we burned. I mean, I expect there to be a lot of stories where organizations cut headcounts because of how efficient AI is going to be, and then need to hire people back because they realized they needed them, and they didn't realize how much they needed them in certain cases until they eliminated them from the organization. It's going to happen.
Or maybe they needed them, but in a slightly different way. Like they just hadn't
Mhm.
quite connected the dots.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about things like coaching? So a lot of people are really excited about,
Mhm.
AI coaching, chatbots that, can perhaps help you there and then with your personal kind of workplace problems. Where do you kind of fall on that, in terms of, I guess, tech versus human in that scenario?
I coaching is the greatest example for me in terms of the opportunity that I see in the world of L&D, and in a space where it just expands what we could do without necessarily creating risk around just the automation. I mean, if you think about coaching is a very personal process. Coaching is a very individualized process for the person being coached. And that doesn't scale well. It's like mentoring. It doesn't, like, the ability to scale that broadly across everybody is limited by our ability to have those one-on-one conversations with people. And that's one of the challenges. I mean, I know my experience that was always the challenge of yeah, we could do, like, the only coaching programs that I felt were really, really successful that I was engaged in were the ones that were narrowly focused on a certain audience. So there was a I never liked the fact that we only invested in these coaching programs for the leaders in our organization, because it was high, it was expensive because it was high touch, and and we would love to make it more um, available to everybody, but we can't really afford to do that because the resources of all the external coaches we would need to bring in to scale that is just not feasible. So we're going to focus on the highest impact people that are in an organization. I never liked that. But that was what the decision that needed to be made in order to apply a coaching program in a way that was successful for the people that were engaged in it. Now we've got technology that is going to enable us to get over that hump. And it was a hump that always bothered me, to apply coaching at scale, to apply it at different levels, to not to remove the resources necessary, and at the same time to still. I haven't seen this implemented yet but the technology is there, and the solutions are going to catch up very quickly. I think right now there's a lot of automation around coaching that you could do it, and these AI, you can have a conversation with an AI, and it is very effective and it's very impressive. But I haven't yet seen the systems in place yet, and it probably exists, and I haven't just been experienced it yet in some organizations where it's it's going to trigger, it's going to recognize when the AI has helped someone as far as they can and trigger the human to step in and take it to the next level. I haven't seen that as of yet, but the technology, all the individual components to enable that is there, is to identify, kind of place a line in the sand of the experience of, okay, AI can handle 95% of it that's below this line, but if it's a scenario that goes above this line, then we want to get a real human involved in this coaching situation. And that's going to enable us to be more effective in the work that we do. We'll be training the AIs and creating the scenarios around these things to enable us to do that at scale. That to me is the prototypical enhancing the work that L&D does in a way that enhances the value of the L&D professional, by blending the automation and the expansion of what a program can be.
Yeah, that seems like the fact that it's available to everybody and would automatically be personalized, and you can ask away, right, kind of infinitely, depending on where you stand in terms of like a sustainability around some of the use of AI. But it doesn't get annoyed. It doesn't, it
Mhm.
doesn't get tired, and there's no limits to it, right? So there's
Yeah.
huge benefits there. It'd be interesting, that idea of kicking in, when you might need some real human coaching. I was
Mhm.
thinking when you said that also, like when it might make sense to bring a group together, like the
Mhm.
recognition that hopefully by L&D and kind of the strategists around this to recognize that people learn together in ways that you can't learn on your own. It's kind of
Yeah.
the sum is greater than its parts quite often. So when to bring a kind of like-minded cohort together or a different-minded cohort together to learn from one
Mhm.
another, that would be, maybe that already exists as well. But
Yeah,
watch
absolutely.
the space, I think. Okay, so are there any other kind of aspects or aspects of, I guess, use of AI and L&D that particularly excite you? A bit like the kind of coaching, that you think that would be great if L&D can start to fold that more into their kind of thinking or their modelling.
Um, it's not there yet, but the for me, what I've been giving a lot of thought to is the future of search, and what does that mean for L&D? I connect this to, if you've the first time I've heard this phrase was from Danny Johnson, the potential for a platformless learning experience
Mm-hmm.
where you're not logging into any platform. Um, so if you think about it like your typical interface that is that generative AI right now, the prompt screen that's there, the ability for us to just go in and type something and have an experience. I mean, that's why OpenAI and all these companies are investing in search. I mean, even if you think about how Google search works for you today, I know myself, even though I'm still using google.com for a lot of searches, the way I use it has changed in recent years because of that AI snippet that they have there. And a lot of times I'm not clicking, like it used to be, I would go there to try to find web pages that had the information that I was looking for. Now I'm searching with questions to get the answer directly. And a lot of times the snippet will give me the answer. And if I want to dig deeper, I'll go into the resources around it. So that's how our experience on the web is going, that we're just going to expect these tools to give us, to be able to ask a question and to have it just search through all the different sources that are there to get the answer. And if that's the experience that we're going to have on a day in our day-to-day lives and in our work around trying to get answers in a digital world, what does the future of L&D look like? Like how are we enabling that? How are we supporting that? How does our world pivot in that sense? If people aren't necessarily going to, I mean, I think there's always going to be a case, there's always going to be use cases for courses and places where people need a body of knowledge and an experience to do that. I don't hate the course, I just hate the course by the default for every solution. It has its place. But if on a day-to-day individual learning needs is going down this path of I'm just going to use a system like just a line that's there, and I'm going to ask a question, and it is going to go behind the scenes and find the answer and present it to me in a packaged way. How are we supporting people's evolution towards that future, and what does it mean for us?
Mhm.
It's a fascinating question. It is a scary question for a lot of people of just are we all going to be circumvented in there? But it is it is I don't think we are. I mean, we were scared by these devices that
Yeah.
emerged years ago. I remember being in a case of these emerged, and we're like, oh my god, how can we keep them out of the classroom? That was younger people hear that like that's seriously like
Yeah.
that. You asked that question. We did. We asked that question. There was a fear that this was going to distract them, and then we realized no, this is just another tool of engagement that existed there. Um, and I don't think we're ever going to shift the pendulum towards it's going to replace all the stuff that we do with this new thing, but it is going to be another big slice of the pie that exists in terms of how people interact and how people solve problems in their work. And our model of L&D needs to evolve with that.
Mhm.
The answers aren't there, but the path is the kind of the journey is you could see that that's the direction that things are going towards, and we should be planning appropriately for it.
It's the ultimate curation model, isn't it?
It really is.
And I think Danny Johnson from Red Thread also. I mean, for her, the power was in the voice button. So using your voice to make a request, not
Yeah.
even typing it in, even, but literally just talking to your device, and up pops the answer, and in whatever format you might need it as well for that moment. I
Yeah.
guess it comes back to that kind of wondering I had earlier around, something that helps you in the moment of need, which absolutely is valid, and that's certainly not
Mhm.
something that's focused on enough. Sometimes it's just performance support or skill support in the moment versus that deeper skills development. And I think L&D can definitely be leading with the strategy around that and showing the models and what they might be looking like in both those areas, and carve their role in each of those areas too, because it's not it's not like overnight you can flip to the model just because you might bring in the new tech. It doesn't
Mhm.
mean that suddenly your AI search tools can find the stuff you need without some back end work, right? Some infrastructure, and so it comes back to who's leading that. And if L&D aren't, then well, I'd be raising my hand and trying to get in those conversations.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. That's really helpful to have kind of got your thoughts on kind of bits that are exciting you, but also raises questions around how L&D might get more involved. Um, for L&D themselves, when they're seeing a lot of noise, there's a lot of technology kind of being going out there. There's a lot of like we use AI here, we use AI there.
Mhm.
How can L&D teams actually explore effectively like what they might be useful to use, or what's useful maybe not to? How do you sift through all that? Where would you start?
Um, it sounds trivial, but it served me well. Is to anytime a new tech, and this is my approach to AI. It's my approach to any new tech that emerges. Is to approach it with a spirit of play. I
Mhm.
mean, just remove the oh my god, this is disrupting everything around me, and just play with it. Like just go into these tools. I mean, one of the things I love about the AI tools that are out there is you can explore them for free. That there are free models and all these different tools, and rather than feeling like I've got to apply it in the context of work and all of the complexity that exists in that environment, just play with the tool. Don't worry about you're not gonna if you're using. I sometimes use the metaphor of riding a bike. You're not going to if you knew that you were going to be going on a 12-mile bike journey and you've never ridden a bike before, you're not going to bring the bike to that race that day and go there. You're going to get on it. You're going to try to pedal. You're going to learn the mechanics of riding a bike and develop some comfort with the idea of riding a bike before you need to ride it in a more formal, organized fashion. The same should be true for any sort of a tool. Like if I need to use this in my work, then I want to understand what it means to use this. And not only in the context of, of how do I use this AI tool or whatever it is as a learning and development professional? How are people just using these
Mhm.
tools? I mean, I often say if you want to understand how a new technology is going to change the way that we learn, you don't look at learning and development. You don't look at education and training. If you want to understand how a technology is truly going to change the way, understand how technology is truly going to change the way people learn, look at the way that technology is changing the way that we live our lives on a daily basis. I mean, again, I bring it back to the smartphone. You know, how many times have you been in a situation where you didn't know the answer and you just pulled out your phone and you Googled something? You didn't take a course. You didn't think about being a self-directed learner or anything like that. You just had a problem in the environment that you're in now, this increasingly digital environment. You realize you had the solution to the problem in your pocket, you pulled it out, you solved the problem, you put it back in your pocket. Um, that's where I get into the play aspect of using these tools.
Mm.
How does the integration of these, like, but just by using them in a day to day environment, um, get you into the habit of understanding how they work, how they can function, how they can solve problems. I mean, even something as simple as vacation planning. It had nothing to do with work. Um, I plan. I'm generally the planner for our family vacations. So when we had a trip that was going on recently, I have my process. I know what I need to do, and I do it well so that we don't have any surprises when we go. Um, but every now and then, like last time we were planning a trip, I was just like, I want to see how AI would help me do this, and it did a lot of the stuff that I would normally do, but it also surfaced things that I didn't consider,
Mhm.
and ideas I didn't consider, and took me down rabbit holes that I hadn't considered. And again, it was an interesting thing, but it was just an example of something, an experience that I knew planning for a trip. What does that look like if I used a tool like this? And it expanded my view on what's possible through these tools. And now I can apply that context just that I learned from playing to my workplace my workplace context when I start using those tools in a more formal manner.
Mm. I guess it comes back to, like, you were just saying about how search is changing, right?
Hmm.
When you're looking outside, you're not looking to L&D to think, oh, how people are using content, how people are learning. They're searching on tools like ChatGPT, um, using things like TikTok has been around for a while, and Reddit is not necessarily even using Google anymore. So Google used to be seen as like kind of the threat, like people will just Google it, but the the fragmentation that's happening around that is even bigger and broader. So if meanwhile you're continuing to create your courses and put them out somewhere that's behind three sign-on walls,
Hmm.
then there's something missing there in your thinking, right? You have to connect the dots a little bit.
I do, but the other piece that I'll add to this, and I often think about it, but it rarely comes up in conversation. But so I appreciate the fact that you kind of triggered it. Um, this future that we talk about, this future that we're all talking about, the direction that we're going, it doesn't exist in isolation. It exists in a very complex environment with a lot of complex stakeholders and a lot of complex baggage of legacy. So like I can tell you that I can paint that story of like the prompt that's there and how we're all going to be experiencing it there. And the same thing with Google in history when search was there and everyone's going to be able to just pull out their phone and get the answer. But there's a reason that like everything isn't just we're going to pull out our phone, get the answer, and move on, because and part of it is the environment that we're in. There's a lot of legacy, there's a lot of baggage. In transparency, there's a lot of money attached to the status quo,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore, I mean, think about the LMS market as an example. Um, they would have a very strong resistance to a future that was just kind of like, we don't need a platform at all. There's no reason for you to license any content. People can just do the search and it'll go into repositories. They're not going to support that future unless there's a licensing fee that is giving them more money for access to the content that is going to supply that experience. So and there's also, I mean, God, there's a whole nother conversation around the legacy of what learning looks like. I mean, there's a lot of expectations that people and organizations have around how we define learning based on everything that's gone on in practice in the history of those organizations. And I don't necessarily even mean the training experiences that we've done. There's a certain level of humans are conditioned through 12 plus years of academic experience leading up to their time in the workplace of what learning looks like.
Mm.
And that's a lot of legacy to just drop for some innovative future. So it's not a matter of this future that I and a lot of people are talking about is going to replace it. It is going to be additive. It is going to. That's why I look at it through the lens of this is going to happen. This is how humans on their day-to-day life are going to interact and engage in a digital environment differently in the future. This is kind of the direction we're going. What is that like? It's not a matter of we need to do that, for me at least. It's a matter of, if that's the direction that things are going, how does that inform the future of the work that we do? How do I take what is from here and add that to it? And there may be things that I do today that replaces, but it's not going to replace everything. It's more, and in my experience, it's just another tool in the tool belt. And I
Yeah.
might use some of those other tools less, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they all get thrown away and replaced by this other thing.
Yeah.
It's going to be, I don't think that I'm not a doomsayer about the world of L&D. I don't think technology is going to replace L&D. I think it is going to help us evolve.
I think it's about being mindful, isn't it, though, and having intentionality around what you're doing. So, yeah, if I sounded crude a minute ago by saying, what happens if you carry on making your courses, which might be behind lots and lots of sign-on walls. Meanwhile, you're recognizing that people are using search in very different ways to find answers. It wasn't necessarily me saying one might replace the other, but you have to be mindful of that. You have to be building a pathway in your mind so that those two things can, if you believe so, can exist together, or it might
Yeah.
change the way some of those look. So I think there has to be intentionality about the thinking around it, right?
Yeah. And I think the part of the intentionality is, I mean, I don't, people are always focused on the external forces and how that's going to change the world that we do, and that is an important thing that we should keep an eye on. But for me, I think the more important thing is looking at yourself
Mm-hmm.
and what are you doing and how are you acting, because I don't care what the technology is. I don't think that I'm not a fan of the narratives that exist in our industry that are absolutes, that are, this is going to change and therefore, L&D is going to go away and it's going to be replaced by. So I'm not a fan of absolutes. It removes the context of the organization. But one of the few absolutes that I will accept and allow to go forward is, if I'm standing still, then there's a good chance that the world is going to pass me by.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that reflects the intentionality you're talking about, is being aware of all the stuff that's going on around you and asking yourself, what does this mean to me? What does it mean for the practice? What does it mean to my organization? What does it mean to my career? Like there might be technologies that are disrupting the world of L&D, but you're looking around you and the organization you work for. It's like, man, it's not impacting us at all. We're not playing in that space. That's fine. No judgment on that whatsoever. But you as an individual, that where you work today may not necessarily be where you're going to work 3 years from now. Are you keeping up with what that next job you want is?
Mm-hmm.
Is standing still because your organization's not moving forward hurting you from moving forward into the next role that you want? So you need the intentionality. I love that word. It's a word that I place a lot of focus on myself these days. Being intentional about how you are reacting to what's going on around you, and considering, what does this mean to me? What does it mean to my practice? What does it mean to my career? And making conscious choices on how you're going to react based on those answers is what we all need to be doing.
Yeah, that's a great tip for people who are listening who work in L&D teams right now. Are there any other skills that you think that L&D teams should be doubling down on kind of now to kind of help them as they move towards the future? Maybe some of those human skills that you talked about earlier. Being
Yeah.
adaptable.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think one of the ones, I mean, this is a personal passion of mine, so that I acknowledge that there's a little bit of bias attached to it. I've always been interested in curation. The value that curation has in the world of L&D. And it's interesting how kind of history repeats itself. I was in, we again, I'm aging myself. I'm kind of carbon dating myself in this conversation multiple times. But I remember when social media first emerged, and there was this element of the conversation of, before social media, content was a very controlled thing. Like, only certain people had the ability and the access to create content that other people could consume. Then social media came out, blogs came out, and suddenly everybody had a voice. and there was all of this noise that was there. And who's going to curate it? And that's what for me, curation became a big part of that. There was this skill of being able to distill, to aggregate all of the information, distill what was really of value there, and present that content with the context of why it was valuable to people. That was really, really valuable in the age of social media. We're there again. We've got another moment where now it's not just a matter of, okay, we've opened the door where any human can create content. We've opened the door where any machine can create content. So there's going to be even more noise that's out there. It's going to be better noise to a certain extent, because there's a lot of stuff that's out there that AI can create really compelling content, but it's still an enormous amount of content. And the ability for us as humans and as learning and development professionals to go through that noise, to replace that noise with clarity around, this is an important piece of content and here's why, because I'm connecting this piece of content that's not in your view, I'm bringing it into your view and giving you the context of why it matters. That's a really, really powerful skill that I think is going to be more important. And again, not to touch into the doom and gloom area of it, one thing that's very different to me around the social media emergence of explosion of content as compared to where we are today. When social media exploded, there was always the question of, oh my God, everybody's got a voice. Who's vetting this stuff? We didn't think of it then, but in hindsight, it was kind of easy to spot the stuff that wasn't real on social media, that wasn't true, and someone was just spouting stuff. A fact checking ability within that, just based on where things were, was simple. It's going to be really hard. Mm-hmm. In the future. One of the things, I was having a conversation with an academic team a couple of weeks ago, and I said, I don't know. I said, one of the things that's really hard for you guys is, like, I don't know what learning in an academic setting looks like when you remove truth from the equation. Like when we went to school, you just had a fairly safe assumption that anything that was presented to you was true. And if it wasn't true, it was obvious it wasn't true. We are entering a world where there are going to be a lot of things that people are presented with that is completely fake, but it looks completely real. And that is a really compelling question of, like, what does the future of learning and education look like in a world where truth is questionable? Curation is part of that answer. Mm-hmm. Curation is part of we are going to have trusted people that are out there that are going to do that work for us. And that, to me, L&D professionals are in a unique spot of building in the context, building in the validity of it, and being those trusted people of, if something is being presented by this audience, it matters to me because they understand my context. So curation is the skill that I think is going to be even more important in the age of AI than it's been up until now.
I guess almost building the ideal models for how that should be done within an organization. If AI models are going to do some of that work in the future, some of that bringing together of different resources, different pieces of knowledge, different pieces of content to curate for you, then, what should that model look like, and how can L&D now be showing kind of best practice around that, I guess, is also one of the things you could think about. Like, whether you believe or not, it will fully go out of the hands of L&D or not in the future. With either way, you should be owning how that.
Yeah.
What that looks like in some ways.
Yeah, I definitely think L&D is at the forefront of that discussion. I am never going to be someone who I don't like the absolutes. I as much as I would love to say humans will always be in the loop on that. Technology will never replace this. Technology is advancing at a rapid rate. So never to me is mm-hmm. We don't know what the future is going to be. Yeah. Do I expect it to be something that happens in my career lifetime? Probably not. That technology replaces humans, because and I curate very often in the work that I do. So just as an example of the work that I do, there are kind of different layers to what curation is, and that some of it I don't even necessarily consider curation, but people have defined different things: collecting of information, aggregating of information, organizing of information. Some people put that into the curation puzzle. For me, that can be automated, and that's part of doing good curation. Like, I have a couple of newsletters that I share with people, and part of that is curated resources that are there. Some of it just surfaces in my day to day, but other stuff is just kind of like, what story do I want to tell this week? Let's go find some content on that. And the AI tools have made that so much more efficient for me in terms of surfacing the collection of it. This is the story I want to tell. Go find me some content around that. And like I've got some decent prompts that I've been working on that do the search, bring the content, understand me as an individual, what's important to me, the context that I'm trying to do. And so it comes back and says, here's a resource, here's the link, here's why it might matter given the context that you shared with me. And then I'll go and I'll read those 15, 20 links or whatever it is and make the decision myself of which ones matched it, which one, and how am I tying those together to tell the story that I want. So the surfacing of the content that's there is good, but the nuances that I add as the curator are not there. And in full transparency, like the stuff that I like, if I have 15 links that are in there, 8 of them are wrong. Like the 8 of them are just kind of okay. That's not that it's bad content, but it didn't match what I was looking
Yeah.
for. It was in the zone, but it didn't match what I was looking for. So it did a good job of saving for me having to look. That's why I actually, like, if I need 5 links, I'm going to ask for 20 because I know some of it's going to be wrong, but some of it's going to be pretty good.
Yeah.
So it's important to that's the where the human element comes in. That context that I bring in that I don't even know to write into the prompt.
Yeah. Yeah, and the insights you can add on top. Yeah, I mean, I still find some basic stuff like some of the AI, OpenAI tools will make up quotes, and I'll say, is that quote really from this article, which I've actually shared in the first place? I can't see that quote. Oh no, I added it to be helpful. So it's like, oh, okay, and that happens time and time again. So, but it will get there. But I think again, it's that intentionality. Like, why are you doing it with what, to do what, and to help whom? I guess is key. I'm going to ask you one last question so we can round off our podcast, and that is, and hopefully this quickish answer. But if I gave you a magic wand where you could do anything that you wanted in the space of L&D, it could be changing behaviours, it could be related to tech. What would you do with it if you could make a wish?
It echoes what we discussed earlier. If I had a magic wand, there's no question in my mind I would remove the baggage of what is from the equation. There's a lot of the stuff that we do in L&D, we do because it's what we've done in the past. It's what we know. It's what we're comfortable with, and I think a lot of times that limits our ability to find new ways and new opportunities to enhance the work that we do. So I would remove those blinders that people naturally have on in the work that they do, so that they could see learning and development and the way that we support our organizations through a much broader lens.
It's been fantastic talking to you today, and super, super helpful. And we've explored quite a lot of different avenues, actually. But I think at the core, it's about how to use your human skills at best in the face of new technology and AI to get the best out of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.